Welcome to the Citizens Report. It's the 28th of August. I'm Robert Barwick, and I'm joined today by Citizens Party founder and leader Craig Isherwood. Welcome, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie.
How's your back?
Oh, well, good to be back.
Good. Okay, in this week's Citizens Report, the great bail-in swindle isn't fooling everybody, and Australia's relentless slide to fascism. And Craig, we are going to get straight into it today because the breaking news is on bail-in, right? The great bail-in swindle isn't fooling everybody. The Senate Economics Legislation Committee has handed down the report of its inquiry into Senator Malcolm Roberts' bill, the Banking Amendment Deposits Bill 2020, and they're hoping we'll all just take what they feed us and go away.
It's not going to work, Robbie. I mean, as I saw this report come out, I said, are these guys fools? I mean, look, the Citizens Party, initially CEC, we've been on this case since 2013. Yeah. We have every aspect of this fraud on the Australian people covered, right the way through how it's been directed by the Financial Stability Board, by international bankers. We've got this thing dead to rights. Yeah, we've been publishing stuff on this for 7 years, and these guys are saying, oh, look, there's nothing to see here. Yeah. You know, leave APRA alone. The Treasury says this is fine. This is actually the definition of an absolute cover-up, because the intention here, as you can go through in detail, is that they intend to, and have got in place now, the ability for the Australian government and the banks to bail in people's deposits. And all it will require, when they're saying, oh no, the law doesn't require clarification, all it requires is passing the simple bill by Senator Roberts, and the whole debate is finished. So why not? Because this is a cover-up. There's a deeper intention here.
And this is where people have got to understand, this is definitely a case, actions speak louder than words. So the words are, we will not bail in your deposits, don't worry about it, the law is clear. Trust us. Actions are, okay, if you're genuine, here's a bill that will completely clarify it, put it beyond all doubt. And they've had to twist themselves in knots to come up with reasons not to support that bill. That's what this report is about. Very important thing about the bill they don't want to support, though, Craig, is this already should have been debated by Parliament. And this is the other part about actions speaking louder than words. Remember, if you know the story, if you don't, I'll tell you, when the 2018 Crisis Resolution Powers Law was snuck through Parliament with only 8 senators present on St Valentine's Day 2018, the St Valentine's Day Massacre of Savings, we call it, didn't go to a formal vote. I'm sitting in the gallery with Dr. Wilson Sy watching this play out in front of me, watching how quickly they're rushing it through. I knew One Nation senators had intended to introduce an amendment to clarify the broad wording of the law that said any other instruments, so that you added to that not including a deposit account. So it couldn't. So the doubt that was there could have been clarified then. The government knew One Nation intended to do that. And the government had said to One Nation, we'll get our lawyers to look over your amendment for you. And while One Nation was waiting back in their office, the government rushed this law through the Parliament, and I'm watching how quickly they're doing it. And I left the chamber and I called up One Nation and said, where's your amendment? And they said, we're waiting to hear back from the government. And I said, well, the law has just passed. And they were absolutely shocked, right? That's the dirty tricks the government was prepared to play. So 2 years later, Senator Roberts has put up that bill to do what they tried to do 2 years ago, right? The senators should have already been considering this. There should have been a proper, if there was a proper debate in Parliament 2 years ago, they could have said, well, yeah, people are concerned about deposits. Oh, this is a good idea. Let's just amend that, and that concern's taken away. They didn't want to do that, and those actions speak louder than words. So here's the thing though, we're going to go through the details of this report after the break, Craig, but I want to play a clip now for the viewers, which is the chairman of this committee that's handed down this report, nothing to see here, his name's Senator Slade Brockman. When he introduced the report in Parliament the other day, I want to play you the clip of what happened, because he's introducing the report and then there's an interruption. And what it means is that this is not the final word on this. There will be a debate on this bill, Malcolm Roberts' bill, sometime in the future, probably in November, right? And we have a chance. Ignore the fact that this report says don't pass the bill. That's up to the senators. They have the final word then, and you can intersect that. But just have a look at this clip for now.
I call the clerk. Business of the Senate, Order of the Day number 3, a report from the Economic Legislation Committee on a bill.
Right to touch anything.
Senator Smith, are you going to be tabling that report, or do we have the chair? Sorry, Senator Brockman.
On behalf, thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. On behalf of the Economics Legislation Committee, I present the report of the Committee on the Banking Amendment Deposits Bill 2020 and documents presented to the committee. I would also seek leave to make a contribution.
Is leave granted? Being no objection, leave is granted. Senator Brockman.
I just wish to make a few points. This is a private senator's bill from the Pauline Hanson One Nation Party, Senator Roberts being the initiator of this bill. And I do just want to make a couple of quick remarks on the report and some clarifications that need to be made. This is to do with the so-called bail-in possibility of banking institutions bailing in depositors that has gained some...
Order. Could you just resume your seat? Could senators who are not participating in this debate please leave the chamber or sit in their seats quietly? Thank you. Senator Brockman.
That has gained some traction in the community. And I rise this afternoon really to make one key point, that there is, and the report makes clear that there is no ambiguity in need of rectification by this private senator's bill. It is not possible under current law and regulation for APRA to require banks to bail in deposit accounts. The Reserve Bank, APRA and Treasury all agree that the Banking Act does not imply that losses could be imposed on deposit holders or give APRA any additional powers that could be used to the detriment of retail depositors. Depositors are already safeguarded under a range of protections. The Financial Claims Scheme, where the Treasurer may activate the scheme in the event that a bank fails. Upon activation, APRA provides depositors with access to their deposits within 7 days up to a $250,000 cap. This covers around 99% of deposit accounts in full and around 80% of household deposits by value. There is a depositors preference system which applies to deposits above the FCS cap and means that in the event a bank fails, the claims of depositors ranks above all equity holders and creditors. And there are numerous layers of prudential regulation and interventions APRA can make to resolve financial institutions in distress, such as recapitalisation, statutory management and the transfer of powers. Much of this comes down to the question of what any other how the phrase in the relevant laws, any other instrument.
Order, Senator Brockman. Point of order, Senator Recker.
I was just going out of the chamber. This bill is pursuant to the selection of bills. I understand that leave was given, but normally we don't debate bills that are pursuant to selection of bills, so we would withdraw our support for leave.
In that case, Senator Brockman, you no longer have the call. We return to government business orders of the day. Clerk.
So there you go. The Labor Party whip ran back in there to say, hey, no more discussing this. This is going to be debated in the future, right? So that's the part. We'll give you some information after the break that you can intersect that with. Welcome back to the Citizens Report, where we're discussing the great bail-in swindle isn't fooling everybody. And before the break, I showed the clip of the chairman of this committee introducing this report, saying nothing to see here on the bail-in amendment, don't pass it. But Labor interrupted him and said, no, we will debate that in the future. Now, so what we need you, the viewer, to do, if you like us, oppose bail-in, you've got to spend the next couple of months until this debate comes to Parliament harassing your Member of Parliament, harassing the senators in your state, demand they vote for Malcolm Roberts' bill. This committee report has no bearing on how they vote. This is just the government stating its position, right? They get to decide how they vote. And you don't have to convince them that bail-in is a threat. You just have to convince them that the law is unclear and you feel it's a threat. And because if the only reason they passed Senator Malcolm Roberts is to assure the Australian public, that's still a great reason to do it, if that's the only reason they passed the bill.
And Senator Roberts did write a dissenting report too, Robbie, people can get a copy of, which goes through the actual truth of what's going on here.
Well, that's right. There was a little bit of media coverage, Craig, of this report. So on the 25th of August, which is Tuesday, James Ayres in the Financial Review wrote, Senate committee backs APRA Treasury on depositor protection. And he actually, he made us the feature of this article that he wrote, because he does know, and the Financial Review certainly is aware of our role in bringing this to the public's attention for many, many years. But otherwise, he just accepted that report. This article just accepts the government's report as the final word. There was a much better article in the ABC on its website by Nassim Kadem. Post-coronavirus deposits are safe with the banks and debt for property is not a huge risk, say regulators. And what she did was report, not just the report, but Senator Malcolm Roberts' dissenting report, and especially the very important point that dissenting report says, which is that if, as the committee agrees, there's no adverse consequences of passing his bill, we'll just pass it.
What's the issue? Yeah.
What's the issue, right? That's and Nassim Kadem highlighted that. We can put those links below on the YouTube clip here. I just want to highlight a few of the really glaring flaws, though, in the report, because what it relies upon is the public, and especially the members of parliament. This report is targeted at members of parliament, so they have a document, and here it is here, that they can wave around and go, oh, see, someone has looked at this, I don't have to, and they've come to that conclusion, and Treasury's involved in APRA and I don't have to do that, right? And that's how members of parliament work, unfortunately, way too much. They abrogate their responsibility. Now, they're often too busy, and I understand that, but that's because too many laws get rushed through parliament. So this is designed to say to them, oh, see, we've done the thinking for you, don't worry about it. Well, when you look at the details, it's pretty disgusting what the kind of assumptions that they expect people just to accept. And I want to highlight one because it's so important to the way you see the flaws here. There's a line in this report that basically gives an example of there's a type of instrument, Craig, that everyone agrees can be bailed in. It's called a hybrid security or a bail-in bond. And these are bonds that have a high rate of interest and people are attracted to buy them. But in their terms and conditions, they say that under certain circumstances, they can be turned into shares or written off, right? These types of bonds. So in exchange for your high interest rate, you carry this risk. Now, in countries like the UK, these bonds are not allowed to be sold to the public, to the general public, mum and dads, to retail investors. They're only sold to sophisticated investors who can be aware of the risk. In this report, it talks about these bonds and says, APRA's prudential regulation ensures they can't be sold to people who don't know their risk. And there's footnoted to APRA's prudential regulation, and that regulation was struck in 2015. And so I looked it up, this regulation, and the fact that it was issued in 2015 told me all I needed to know. Because in October 2017, the head of ASIC, who's the securities regulator, he was outgoing at the time, he's just finished his tenure, and on the way out of office, he lobbed a hand grenade at APRA. And in parliamentary testimony to the same committee, he made a big deal about these bonds, and he accused APRA of letting people, mum and dad investors in Australia, buy them without knowing their risks, right? And he said, these are a ticking time bomb. They will be bailed in. These are a ticking time bomb, and the people who hold them wouldn't know that, right? Yet there's a prudential regulation from 2015 that supposedly protects them. Yeah. And it's just an example that the government's assurances in these areas are just not worth anything. They're worthless. You can't take their assurances as gospel unless it's black and white in the legislation. That's all we're asking for, right? And you, the viewer, can really make a big issue out of that. So next few months, we'll keep giving you information on our website, etc. But you start engaging your senators, all 12 senators from your state and your members of parliament. Go to our website for the links to, you can find their contact details, and just keep demanding, you must pass this bill, you must pass this bill. So, there's plenty more we could keep saying, Craig, but we've got another subject to move on, so let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Australia's relentless slide to fascism. Welcome back to the Citizens Report. So finally, Australia's relentless slide to fascism. And we want to highlight a very important ongoing problem in this country, Craig, which we've been going after for 20 years, literally, which is this, what the laws that are getting rammed through Parliament in the name of national security, right? And we've had, since 9/11, and slightly older viewers or old enough viewers will remember how that became the excuse for, we need all these protections against terrorism. There's been 85 such laws passed in Australia in 20 years that give the government and the intelligence agencies like ASIO enormous power, right? And now there's more, and I want to highlight a few of them. The details are in this latest issue of our Australian Alert Service, which you can, if you haven't received a copy before, you can call in and get a free copy of. It's available to get regularly as well. There's an article here, Morrison Government's National Security Hypocrisy Exposed. But these are the bills, the extra bills that are before Parliament now. One is the Telecommunications Legislation Amendment, International Production Orders Bill 2020. And what does this bill do? Well, there's the main electronic spy agency in Australia, Craig, is called the Australian Signals Directorate. It used to be called the Defence Signals Directorate. There's a rule they can't spy on Australians. This law allows our agencies to get around that by going to their Five Eyes partners, the equivalent in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada or New Zealand, and get, when they spy, they're allowed to spy on Australians and get the information from them. Right? Because this is not just part of Australian fascism, we're part of this Five Eyes is a network of global fascism. People like, Edward Snowden and William Binney from the NSA blew the whistle on this sort of stuff.
Yeah, we've got a long history of reporting on this. We go back to 2004, we produced a new citizen called, about what we call the Synergy.
Yep.
Right, which actually went through in detail, and I think we've got enough copies here. If people really want a copy of this, then they should call up if they haven't, and get
absolutely.
a copy.
The history
because
of
this goes through the actual details of all those laws that were passed post 2001 and the actual nature of the Liberal Party, which actually was a fascist organisation. Born out of this. So this is not, the Liberal Party, what it's doing today is not out of character for what was done back under John Howard with the fascist laws, but even going back into Sir Robert Menzies.
Robert Menzies, co-founder of the Young Liberals, was a Victorian MP named Wilfred Kent Hughes, who wrote a 3-part series in 1935 for the Melbourne Herald, Why I Have Become a Fascist.
Exactly. So look, the motive of introducing all these fascist laws, of stripping away people's rights and privacies under the idea of cyber terrorism or any sort of terrorism.
Just look for a pretext.
That's all it is. So, I mean, if people want a copy of that, I'm sure we can find it.
And it coincides, Craig, of course, with economic breakdown, because that's when they need it, right? Because that's when the public's likely to rise up. Let me just say a few other things about these laws, though. The two other ones I want to highlight is an ASIO Amendment Bill 2020, which will allow ASIO to detain and interrogate kids as young as 14. At the moment, the age limit is 16, if they are likely to engage in, well, one of the things is politically motivated violence, so of course you're a 14-year-old could be a terrorist, but also espionage and foreign interference, right? And then there's one where there's Peter Dutton's Department, Homeland Security, has a discussion paper protecting critical infrastructure and systems of national significance. They want to expand critical infrastructure definition to include every possible thing, not just water, power and communication systems, but banking, universities, food and grocery. Because by doing that, then Dutton's department can take them over under certain circumstances, right? This is the sort of stuff they're pushing, and of course, all this is done in a few years ago. This was all anti-Muslim, anti-terrorism. Now it's all anti-China, foreign. The Chinese are a threat. We need this China stuff. What we want to do is play you a clip though, because Australians have bought into this idea that China is evil. There's an assumption that everything Chinese is evil, the evil CCP, the evil Communist Party. Listen to a diplomat from Singapore, the Singaporean ambassador to the United Nations in 2018, addressed this misassumption, this misunderstanding of China that's in the American and Australian mind. And just think about it in terms of how you think about China.
I think that there's also fundamentally a major misunderstanding of China in this country. And let me tell you what the major misunderstanding is. You've seen that China was ruled by Communist Party in 1949, ruled by Communist Party in 1979, it will be ruled by Communist Party 2019, and you assume that China hasn't changed. It's still being run by the same Communist Party. But the Chinese Communist Party has obviously changed fundamentally. I mean, I went to China for the first time in 1980. When I went to China for the first time in 1980, the Chinese people didn't have the freedom. They couldn't choose what to wear. They all wore Maoist suits. Yeah. They couldn't choose where to live, where to work, what to study. And certainly zero Chinese could travel overseas. Zero. Now you go back to China. The Chinese people can choose what to wear, where to live, where to work, where to study. And guess what? Every year, 120 million Chinese, right? I think it's more than the population in California. 120 million Chinese leave China freely as tourists. Amazingly, 120 million Chinese return to China freely. Now, if China was a communist, gulag, Stalinist state, would you go back to China? And so there's a complete misunderstanding of China. Clearly, while the political freedoms in China haven't increased, the personal freedoms of the Chinese people has exploded. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, one of the questions that future historians will be very puzzled by is the judgments made by America on China. And I'll tell you why they'll be puzzled. The United States of America is about 240 years old. Chinese history, maybe 2,400 years old. In today's world, you have a society which is 240 years old, passing judgment on a society which is 2,400 years old, and at a time when China has had its best 30 years of history, the Americans are telling Chinese, you guys are not doing very well. Really, you should change your political system. Listen to us, become a democracy, all will be well with you. And I can tell you one thing, that Chinese leaders, there's a whole shades of opinion among them. The one complete point of agreement that they all have is that they saw what happened to the Soviet Communist Party. They saw what happened to the Soviet Union. They saw what happened to Russia. It went overnight to a democracy. Guess what? The Russian economy imploded. Life expectancy came down. Infant mortality went up. The Russian people suffered. And the Chinese said, this is what happens when you have an instant democracy. So when the Chinese said, give us time, let us transform our political system in our own way, I said, let them do it. Why do you think that you would know better what's good for them? Does that reflect the fact that for 200 years, you got used to doing it, telling the world how they should behave, and therefore you think you can be a better judge of the rest of the world? So that judgmental character in the West has got to adapt to the rest of the world, because the rest of the world today is less willing to be judged by you.
So if you accept the assumption that, Craig, that China is pure evil, you will accept everything the government is dishing up to you to say we've got to have these things to protect us from this threat. Yep. But if you look at what he's saying and you realise, well, no, okay, there may be some differences, but they're normal people. There's great improvements. Where's this coming from? You see that it's a smokescreen, because the agenda of fascism is not China driving it. This is our side driving it in Australia, and that's what we've got to fight, and that's what we're fighting. So thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week for more.